All right. You're being recorded. I have to legally tell you that. Okay. All righty. So be careful what you say. All right, so I'm going to get started, and anybody joins us will just join us in whatever work order we're on. Some of these work orders I won't be able to explain too much on, but I'll at least talk about them at some level. Okay, so the first one is 1313. We were having problems that was being described. I think it was coming from your support desk, but I could be wrong. But I think the issue was that occasionally people would be putting in an invalid account string on the self-service system, the ERC system as a limited user, and they were putting an invalid account string. They were getting an error message, but then as they got off the record, it actually still let the entry go in. And this was, basically based on the setup right here. It's actually on General Ledger setup. Hold on, let me just actually switch back. Let's go to General Ledger setup. So in General Ledger setup, we have an option if the district wants to run it this way, which most districts nowadays do, which is checking this button right here, validate requisition entry. And so if that is checked, in theory, what we're saying is don't allow requisition line, either in the back office or on the self-service system, to come in and be inserted into the requisition if it doesn't have an account string that that is valid. It doesn't exist, as if you will, that combination of components doesn't exist. So anyway, it wasn't really working on the requisition. They could sneak it in, they could submit it, and then it would get approved. All that because once you submit it and it gets past that first check, it would allow it to go all the way through approval, but then it would error out later on. I think it would error out when you try to convert it over to a purchase order. Anyway, we found the bug. It was just some code in the wrong spot. That's all it really was once we got looking at it. And so we fixed it, and it's now not going to let you put a line in there if you have an invalid entry, and you can't get it in there, and you can't submit because you can't even get it in there. So please test that and prove that to be the case, but I'm 99.99% sure that will be the case. One thing we were also asked to do in this same work order, which is actually interesting, is that in payable setup, and this is where I was earlier before I moved around, there's an option here called apply validations on submit, and it actually was down in this section. It was in the limited user access section. The reason it was down there is because we actually were only applying it on the limited user, and we weren't applying it on the back office users, the people that use the Windows client, if you will. And so we've moved this option up into the K12E section, and that wasn't just moving one field up to another fast tab. It was actually, we changed all the code so that even in the back office now, if again you have an invalid account string, you can't submit it. And again, it's probably kind of esoteric if you're just can't even get it in. But there were some other validations that I think it was failing as well later on, and we want to know about them right up front. So we kind of made that consistent. So the back office and the what I call the front office or limited user now are all being forced to have valid entries, and otherwise they can't hit the submit key. So that's kind of what we were doing, and we applied that to purchase orders, requisitions, everywhere. So that was a fairly decent, not that much code, but important code was done under 1313. Very lucky work order, 1313. These next two work orders, I don't know, unless Kevin is on the line, which he's not. I'm not completely, we were just talking in our development meeting about the benefit export tool. I know that Chris has done some testing. I'm not sure how much you guys have done some testing, but I haven't been that privy to what goes on there, so I think we'll just let that verbiage stand on its own.
That should be its whole own training session.
Right.
Using that, yep.
Yep, and that's what I was advocating in the dev meeting, is that we ultimately need to document the whole thing, Linda, but also I think provide a separate training on it. So I'm just kind of gloss over that. And Meta, if that's something that you're interested in doing, I'd say probably coordinate that with I'm not sure whom. Probably start with Dan or Chris and work through others to get that organized. This 1328 Ohio STRS workspace modification modified the normal STRS workspace so that the accrued indicator field is set according to the process for handling advance pay. The normal STRS workspace will also need to accommodate how the contributions are reported in that overlap period. Not sure what's going on there. If anybody on this call knows more about that, speak up.
We're still working with that. We've got part of it done, but then we've run into another little item that we need to work through with the way it's actually calculating the dollars, especially when a person has two jobs. So they've got in July and August when they have like their advanced pay job, and then they also have like a tutor job or something else going on. Then we've got an issue there we need to work through. So we've got to look at that and get it cleaned up. We're just about, since we're now in September, we've just about covered probably all that advanced pay at this point, but we still need to get it one more time, work through it, so we're not at this crossroads next year.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments to that before we move on? All right, 1331. This is one, and I know, Linda, I see you've joined from Trekka, or is it? I guess it's Meta, right? I guess Meta is the. Yeah, of course it's Meta. Yeah, we've done a lot of stuff with timesheets, even in the 14th release, which is still being closed out. I think right now it's set to close on the 11th of September. But what we did there in 1331, which we hadn't really realized, is that if a timesheet is created and behind the scenes we default in information, the job and the start date, and then later on, while that timesheet is out there, somebody goes over to the timesheet and, let's say, renames the start date for that job. It wasn't fixing the associated timesheets, and therefore was kind of orphaning them and then causing some other issues. Obviously, a lot of issues when we try to retrieve it into the time journal. So in 1331, we were doing a lot of work to make sure that if we renumber or rename, if you will, that start date or the job number or whatever, during the renaming process, there's specific code now that goes out and examines timesheet entry data and fixes it accordingly. So that part was fine. We've subsequently have discovered other issues that are multiple, and you'll see that all kind of documented as part of the 14th release. We really feel like, I feel very confident that we're getting on the right side of really focusing and getting certain things that have really been causing Linda and others some grief in the 14th release. But this piece here was very important building block to what we are doing ultimately also as well in the 14th release, which we'll talk more about. Go ahead.
So Andrew,
yes, sir.
If you do of course, if you create a timesheet with no lines on it, then there's nothing there. When the user goes out and says, "Oh, I'm putting time in for this job," it grabs the current information and puts it in. So that's clean. But then my question would be, if the timesheets that have been created are blank, no lines on them, and so the employee goes out and says, "Okay, I'm going to go to next week. I want to copy last week's jobs over." When it copies that job or last week's timesheet, does it bring in the same start dates and data?
Well, again, you can't really get any more start dates that are invalid connected to the job. So I don't know how you could get it in from last week, because remember, last week, if you had done the renumbering, it would have fixed last week.
Okay.
So, I mean, I
So
guess
if you're doing a copy last week's timesheet into this week as a starting point, then it's all current data anyway.
Well, the only question will be, when they're crossing over to their new job for the next year. So that is something that we may need to test and verify, and maybe put a little code out there to deal with that scenario. Because I think what could happen is that it could maybe fail because the job's now blocked or whatever. I don't know. I haven't really done a lot of testing right on the cusp of the changeover from job A to job B, year A to year B, if you will, with using the copy from previous lines. So that is something that somebody should probably test, maybe on the K12 side or the Meta side, and but again, in a test database, and we'll see if that's causing us an issue, because that's something that I have not particularly focused on was copying from previous week.
Okay.
So that's something to think about.
All right.
All right, 1333, benefits admin, open enrollment, user defined, user acceptance prompt, and acceptance tax. This is just when in a normal ERC, when you, in the setup, you can say that the user must go ahead and get some acceptance language on the screen, making sure that they read this, that, and the other, some disclaimer, whatever, and then they hit the OK to proceed. We hadn't added that capability in the benefit enrollment part. We did that in 1333 to make it consistent with the tax change or W-4 change or a direct deposit change. That same acceptance tax ability was just skipped and not put in there. We now did it in 1333, which to me I feel like we did that a long time ago, but I guess 13 was, I guess, been open for a long time. All right, printed requisition, customizations, features. So we were doing a lot of work on the printed requisition, and I suspect it's probably on the ERC. So let me see if I can just find one that's hopefully got some data in it. And so on the print, where's the print? I guess it's under report. So we got signatures now. This is new, okay? 1 or 2 signatures. I think lines we're talking about. Account string, GL account, print extended text, so forth. Let me just go ahead and send that to PDF and see what this looks like. Some comments have been added, capability of doing comments. All right, it's taking a second because it's the first time I've asked it to do a report today, so it's waking up the reporting engine, which is why we're sitting here waiting. Thank you. So a lot of the work here, and again, I'm not sure exactly everything that was done here. Payment order. So you can see it's called a payment order. That is not really what it's normally called. There must be setup somewhere. So we're going to have to go find those setups. I think they're probably in purchase and payables. This doesn't say so, but I'm going to go ahead and take a look at purchase and payables to see. What happened here is that we have a client actually in the Caribbean, and the Caribbean client uses the requisition printout, the report itself, to send to the true another governmental agency, if you will, who ultimately puts it out to order, places it on order. So it's kind of a convoluted system. So we kind of took this opportunity to beef up the capability of the printed requisition, and that's really what 1336 was all about. That title, I'm not sure where that's coming, but I'm suspicious that it's coming from purchase and payables setup. But I could be wrong because I don't see anything in here per se. Does anybody on this call know where that came from? That title, was that? Oh, there it is. Okay, I see it right here. So that's all that was added there, payment order. So that's where the title's coming from. So you can retitle it. It's doing comments, doing extended text, and so forth and so on. So that's really what is going on there. Let me just print it one more time just to see. Okay. Request for, need to print the full name. Okay, so it says Andrew Fast. Good. Make the title user definable. Okay. Add reference number to the requisition header. Okay. Add access. Okay, so you guys can read all that. But anyway, so a lot of stuff was being done there. And hopefully it's not going to upset anybody, but give some other people some capabilities there. And I think that's probably all good. 1337, multi-currency capability in transactions. Again, we were having to do a lot of multi-currency stuff, particularly in this both Canadian market, but also particularly in the Caribbean. So we're doing a lot of work with multi-currency and making sure that we can handle all the different currencies that the system requires down there. So I'm not going to belabor that because I don't think in Ohio you guys are in a lot of currencies. So I'm going to just skip right past that. But if you get anything that doesn't seem right, let us know. One thing that I do know and I see occasionally is that people have a country in their country table, and I know Linda, you had this. Linda Daniels I'm talking to the other day, and I felt like we removed the country and it solved your problem, or maybe I wasn't you. I can't remember who I was working with.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay.
On the employee, removed the country, and it took care of my problem.
Yeah, we were getting sometimes people don't realize they get some weird addressing problems and they can't quite figure it out. And often the country table might have a value in there. Unless you really are multi-country, it's better not to be using any records in the country table unless you really want to be and you really want to do that intentionally. Otherwise, you might get some funny addresses. Okay, so 1339, add ASN option. Again, we have some districts in Ohio using ASN, I know. So we're just going through some of these reports over here, and I'll show you the section that we're in. Let me just close that, continue here. And so we're primarily, in this example, going to these reports here, some of these reports, and we're going through them, and we're basically allowing them to do ASN. So one of the ones, employee GL distribution. I'm not sure if it's a choice on the option tab now. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so you'll see that appearing pretty much anywhere that we have account strings. We now have ASNs as alternatives to the account string for districts that prefer to run their business by ASNs. We now support that as much as possible. And again, I'm sure there's still more changes coming forth on that. 1341, business rule line and deliver to address. Unable to enter the deliver to address at a business rule object. Supplied name cannot be found. That was just a technical flaw. So that was more over in this area here. And I think it was in approval rules. So we are actually, must have never had anybody actually well, let me just find one randomly. It doesn't matter. Because when you went down to, I think here, I think the deliver to, and you pick the deliver to address here, then when you got to this lookup, you got an error. And this is now working. So that was the technical flaw. So that kind of told us that we probably had nobody who was actually using deliver to as a reason to determine an approval rule. You know, I'm going to approve based on where it's going to be delivered. And so we had a district wanting to do that, and then that's when this flaw kind of became obvious to us, and we fixed it in this work order. 1342, need the ability to have no carriage return or line fee at the end of each record on the export tool. So again, that's something that we're having some problems. So I guess there's an option now. Does anybody know anything about this one? Because I'm not sure myself where we are in the system with this export tool. Is this the benefit export tool? Or is this all the same thing? Anybody know?
I think this is probably part of the, oh no, up with the upgrade toolkit.
No, it says export
it's
tool.
really, yeah, benefit export tool is kind of being renamed just generic export tool.
Okay, so that's where I was
So,
getting
same
confused
thing.
a little bit. Same thing. Okay, fine. So we were having a problem with
Oh, up
the
there.
need the ability to have no carriage return or line fee at the end of certain records. So again, we're trying to be able to handle more and more requirements for providers, anybody that needs our data, the ability to actually directly generate the data in a format that's directly actionable by that other entity. And so, you know, somebody says I can't have carriage return line feeds, we add that to the system. And so we continue to grow the functionality of this tool as more and more consumers, if you will, of the exported data, you know, aren't satisfied. We have to then update the tool so they are satisfied. And so the goal, again, as we go forward, is to take some of the exports we've written over the years and continuing to sort of mimic them in the export tool and then remove them from the system so that we have more of a data-driven model for kind of all provider updates of data going forward. And mainly in the benefit area and the payroll area, that's kind of the key area, but it'll be other areas as well, I suspect, as time goes on. Okay. Payroll date problems related to employee job filtering validation. Oh my, this was a big one. Is Melissa on this call? No. Oh gosh. So this is one that I'm still not 100% sure of myself, and this is one that you know, we have always used the check date to determine what job we are going to look for. So based on the start date and end date of the job, based on the check date, we try to figure out which is the right job. And we really have been moving towards the fact that the start date and end dates really are more about working, you know, the starting time that they're working on that job and the last day they're working in that job. And so if that's the case, then if you think about from a pay cycle period, the check date's really not important, but then what date is important? And so that's kind of the dilemma, because a pay period, a pay cycle, has a start date and has an end date. And so a lot of what we did in this change in 1345 was to move to the end date of the pay cycle as the arbiter to determine which job to see as the active job within any kind of calculation being used. For instance, getting the rate. When a salary drops in and you've programmed it, which job does it actually go after? And using more of the end date of the pay cycle as opposed to the check date is really, I think, what the system is doing in this 1345. I still think this is an area that will continue to sort of be perfected as we go on. I still think, I've said it several times, so I still think we should have the ability to create multiple records in the payroll journal from one earnings code. So let's say earned sal, and I have 2 salary jobs, both with earned sal, be able to create both records in the journal as it processes through. It's kind of related to this, but not exactly related to this, but I still think that's an area that we need to be able to master, so we don't have to do an earned sal 2, earned sal 3. I don't know if you guys do that in Ohio, but I've seen certainly Linda do that with other districts, and I think that's goofy, personally. It creates more work than we need to. 1346, additional work related to problems with employee job filtering validation by date. So again, it's just more work. These were kind of connected to each other, and most of this work was done by Kevin, kind of related to the same thing, using the date worked and understanding the date worked as connected to the start date and end date of the job, and using the pay period end date as the determinant. I mean, obviously, if it's data entry like time journal, the date worked is known, and so then the date worked is compared to the start date and end date of the job. So that part is pretty straightforward. It's more when it's kind of automatically popping in the journal that then the decision has to be made, because you don't have a date worked. You just have what pay cycle you're on. So that's kind of 1345, 1346 were related in that way. We had a problem with the upgrade toolkit, so that's related to 2009, people moving to 2013 platform, and so I'm not going to belabor that. That was something that's done in the toolkit. Mohammed probably did that work for us, I'm assuming. Leave accrual units, we've now expanded to 4 digits. This is applicable when we do a leave accrual, in which was like a rate per hour. So if you actually do, let me kind of go to leave groups here. And I probably won't have an example of this, but that's okay. Okay, it's really in this spot right here. So let's say this wanted to be 4.5834, and now we'll take that. Okay, so you go up to 4 digits on the accrual unit. This really is applicable when you are using more of a calculation method, if you will, where it's a rate per hour. So if you're doing a rate per hour, generally it's a very small number. And to be fair to the employees, you have to go usually more digits than 2 to make it fair. And so that's why we're increasing it to 4, is for people that are using the calculation method of a rate per hour. We want to be as fair as possible and as accurate as possible to what the policy says. And so that's why we expanded that to 4 digits. Again, you generally don't need that for a fixed amount of accrual units. I'm going to go ahead and set this back. But you really need that more for when you're doing rate per hour. All right, 1353, payroll comments, adjustments. Yeah, we did a lot of work there. Kevin did all this work. I don't know, Linda, if you have any comments on that. I'm not sure exactly what we're doing. It's kind of, have you been using these comments a lot in payroll, or anybody on this call?
I don't know what those changes were for.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm not sure who requested it, but I do know that there is a new table that was here, payroll comment categories. So there's an ability to have a comment category, and I believe that there's now a setup that says what the default is. So that's one of the things I know we asked about. So I think the comment categories are coming from data entries that come in from the time journal that might have comments on them from other subsystems, Linda. I think that's kind of what was what Debbie and Kevin were after. I believe in payroll setup, but I could be wrong. There's a default now, but I will look and see. Let me see if it's here. Yeah, right there, general. And so I think where this occurs is even back in the time journal. So let's just see if I got any data in the time journal here. Of course not. Let me just All right, let's see what Melissa has. I don't know. I just can't remember Melissa's jobs though right now. So let me just quickly just go check her jobs. She's always flipping around. So she's got, what's an hourly job that's active? That's not active. Board delivery. Yeah, I think board delivery. Okay, so I think in the comments, where are the comments? Okay, there's this category. See how it popped in automatically? Okay. And so it's an ability over time. I'm not really sure why we're categorizing comments, but they do default in automatically. You could hide this screen when you go ahead and you post this. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I meant to post it. Let's help to put some hours in there. Give her a rate. Oh, she's got no allocation either. That's a terrible job. Terrible job. This is very much play data. All right, so okay that. Go to the payroll journal. And in here, the comments should be showing up. Okay, and the question is, how are they even connected to this record? You're not seeing how it's connected. Yeah, I'm not sure how it's connected per se. Let's see if it's connected to both lines. Yeah, it's connected to both lines. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on with this. We're adding comments, and exactly, I think what I've been told is that this comment area will be used more prevalent in future releases. So this is kind of precursor work for some stuff that's coming down the pipe. That's really all I know at this point about it, but I do know how it works. And again, if you do want to use it, it is operational to allow yourself to be able to comment. I could see in time entry systems from Chronos, for instance, maybe they're putting special notes or something on a particular key punch of somebody, and it's ability for those comments to kind of make their way all the way into the permanent records.
Yeah, I noticed on the import tool, the K12E map. There's, we tried to fool with that to get that to work, and at the time it wasn't working to import like a ASOP, but there's
Right.
comments that could come over from that system, and then it'll flow in here, and then it'll
Gotcha.
go all the
Yeah.
way through. So.
Yeah, and I know they've been changing that quite a bit lately, even in this next release, 14th release. So that's possibly what's going on there. Update ERC setup. I'm on 1362. Create users from employees. Report. Add missing limited user access. Add missing limited user access options to report. Okay, what we're talking about is in the ability when you're in application setup, employee resource center, create users from employees. What are we adding? That's what add missing recent limited user access options. Oh, all this. Yeah. So basically, we added all of that in this option. So again, what we're trying to do here, particularly for people that are not using Windows authentication but using database logins, which applies to Meta, applies to, I know, our cloud offering, might not apply to somebody who's hosting on-prem. But generally speaking, for people that are in the hosted environment, these database logins, we have the ability to create them from employees. When we do that, the goal in this batch report is to create as much, if not all, of the user setup options that we would need to be fully articulated to be ready to go and operational. And so what we realized is that these fields need to be checked possibly. And so we've added all these fields here, and again, if we're missing any, let us know. But the idea is, again, to create a record so that the user, there's no other maintenance required. Boom, they're ready to go. And so we had missed those options there. We now have added them. So that's 1362. 1363, enhance enhanced print posted purchase order report. Oh, okay. So this is a report that we hadn't paid much attention to. So in payables under history, okay, we have the posted purchase orders. There we go. And I'll go to the, let's say the one that's more recent. And if we go there and we go to print, this report really did not have anything really done to it in a long time. And so I guess what we asked Mohammed to do was to make it similar to the standard report, to the standard purchase order report. I don't know if that's true. I think it is true, Mohammed. You're on this phone call, but does that sound about right as to what you were working on? Yeah, that looks like it. Yeah, this looks like very much like the standard PO. Now he's made it do this now for the posted purchase order. Very nice work, Mohammed. Okay, so that's kind of what he was doing there. I think he's probably not listening or whatever. Anyway, he's on mute. Anyway, we're good. 1365, post ASN numbers to ledgers. Mohammed also worked on this. He did a lot of work in this area. I worked with him on this a little bit. So we're taking the ASN now to all the different ledgers, the general ledger entry and the vendor ledger. Well, I'm not sure exactly all of them, but payroll journal, line distribution archive, which is the payroll GL distributions. So you'll see ASNs appearing in all those ledgers, and that's going to allow for better reporting. Because when people say, give me a report from that posted data, if that ASN's not there, we're not going to go figure it out. We're never going to go and say, let's figure out what the ASN probably was based on what account string we see. We've decided that's never what we're going to do. So to do it correctly, we have to actually have it in the data. It's known at the time during posting. Let's post it all the way through, and then the report can then print it, but not guess it. And so that's why it's really important for us to post all the way down to the ledgers. And so that's what 1365 was. Nice piece of work there, Mohammed. Installment reserve field edit. Allow user K12 to edit the installment reserve field in order to correct data. So this is, again, with North Carolina, and it's given us the ability to edit some important data. So if we are using installments, I guess, Linda, do you have any comment on this one?
That was to allow Allie to go in and fix some stuff.
Okay, Linda's left the call as well, so okay, I'll quit calling on her since she's not here anymore. But yeah, so I know that's what that was.
Yeah, I think it is specifically just for the K12 user ID. Hey there, this is Allie.
Yeah, are you sure? I'm not sure how that would be possible. Yeah.
Mohammed actually, he pinned it down to just that username.
Oh my God! All right, I don't even want to know about it. I'm gonna close my ears.
Never mind.
Never mind. I'm moving on. I don't even want to hear it. All right. Okay. Time journal post. New problem with comp time entries created in payroll journal. Does anybody know anything on that one? Changes are needed to capture and post all leave taken. So I think we were having a problem. We made major changes with leave in the sense that the leave required the job to be there, and I think we're having problems with our comp time. Entries. They weren't getting the proper job code there or whatever, and so changes were made to get that resolved. Does that sound right to anybody that's on this call?
Yeah. Yes, it was assigning the hourly job used to capture hours instead of the regular salary job.
Oh, right. And we need it to be the regular salary job because that's where we're accruing, and we need everything to be consistent. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Gotcha. I remember that. Very good. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. Override calculation order not being considered. When calculating payroll with an entered override calculation order, the entered order is not considered and the default order master is used. I'm not sure. I don't remember that one. If the desired calc order is put on the journal as the default, then the calc sees. Does anybody know? Is that really true?
It was not letting us override the calc order, and it was something you fixed. We ran into it with summer pays in North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, I think with all the changes we made, we probably caused some issue there, and then we fixed it, right? I think we had to advance that one probably.
We did.
Okay. Purchase invoice posting doesn't update. So when you post in a purchase invoice, system is not posting the PO number on the rec number associated with the transaction, the GL entry. Oh, yes, I did this one. Yeah, we were having all kinds of weird problems. My brother, during a demo, told me about this one. And I said, really, Jeremy? You're going to tell me I've got a real problem with this? So it really related actually to, just GL count string. I don't know if there's these fields here, and I'm just going to just grab anything randomly. Why is it not? I'm in the wrong column, no wonder. All right. But it's these fields here, these guys right here. Okay, purchase order number, purchase requisition number. What we did is we studied it a lot, and we actually realized that it wasn't consistently getting filled in correctly. And it was not only filled in, I think, if you were directly invoicing from the purchase order, but if you're actually doing like a get receipt, it wasn't posting all the way through. I mean, I can't remember all the different sort of iterations and gyrations that were causing it not to fill in correctly. Never really realized it. So anyway, that's what we were going after in 1372, to make it consistent and much better. So we did a lot of work on that to make sure that that was not going to happen anymore and it was going to post. We did not do any kind of packages or anything to go back in time. We just went ahead and just fixed it so going forward it will be more consistent and correct. So if you've had some questions by users as to why that data hasn't been filled in or it's been confusing to them, you could tell them that's been resolved with this release and they should see it better. And if not, please report it as soon as you can. But I believe that you'll find that to be much more consistent with that at this point. Okay, leave groups and accruals. Change how the determination is made when finding which leave group controlled jobs are in scope for this pay period. So, yeah, I kind of remember that as well. And that was related to dates again. It was kind of back to that other date issue. And then again, we found some issues there that weren't quite right and kind of to fix that. So that's kind of connected to the other ones we were doing where it just wasn't right. But right now, I think it does find the correct leave group based on which job and all that. So I think that's all I know. That's just part of that work that we were doing to kind of fix some of that stuff. New list pages for requisitions and POs. This was actually an interesting one. There's occasionally places you come to where you're drilling, and it's mainly when you're drilling like dollars and things, where it would pop up a list page that it was confused between the normal requisitions and the zero quantity-based requisitions, and same thing with purchase orders. Both of them occasionally would bring up the wrong ones. And so, I mean, when I'm at these screens here, I'll give you an example. So when I go to these pages here, okay, those are different pages. Okay, so there are no problems. But occasionally you can back end to a generic one, because where the piece of data comes up, it needs to show you all POs, whether they're flat, zero quantity based or whatever. Same thing with requisitions. And so what we did is we introduced what I'd call more generic versions of these pages, and those are the ones that will pop up. And you'll notice that on those particular pages, the type of purchase order, the type of requisition will appear, and it will say flat or quantity. And then when you actually click on to get to the edit, it actually will bring up the correct one. And I'm trying to, while I'm sitting here thinking about this, trying to figure out how to get to one of those pages. Anybody on this call have any idea on how to get to one of those pages off the top of your head?
I think if you're trying to do a copy document,
oh, okay.
That's where you found it.
That's good. Let's do it then. Let's do it. Thank you. So requisitions. I'll do a requisition as an example. Is requisition you think is a good one? New. Let's just try that. We can always do it here. Actions. Copy document. So I think what you're saying is, okay, I'm going to switch this to, I guess requisition's fine. Perfect. Thank you, Roxanne. You're great. So there you go. Now we also
That was Angela.
Oh, that was Angela? Oh, no,
That's all right.
Roxanne's voice.
That's okay.
Your voice sounds so similar. That's so funny.
No, that wasn't me.
I know, but they were similar.
Thanks.
I should put you side by side. Anyway, but one thing that we noticed is early on, we actually switched this even midstream, is that this edit button is really a button that we added, and it's in the action. Yeah, it's in the actions. It's not a natural edit, meaning that this is not really coming from the page. This is actually just a fake button we put out there, because we have to direct it to open up page A, which is, this is the quantity based, or this is the flat based one. You can see it's flat based, versus B. We have to open up another one. This is the quantity based one, right? So anyway, so just so you know, that edit button is not, so if I double click it, It actually, you see, because it was in a lookup mode, so it just kind of like selected it. So sometimes you get those screens, you double click them and you open up the card. It doesn't work that way when you're on these more genericized versions. You need to click a button. You don't want to double click, okay, if you want to actually go look at it behind the scenes. So that was just something there I just was going to mention. But good, yeah, that was some important work because we didn't realize we were confusing a lot of people with that. And the copy doc was a great way to see how that see it not function. I think what it was doing in the example was only showing you access to the quantity-based ones. You couldn't copy from a flat-based one. So that's a problem, right? So we had to fix that. Or you just couldn't distinguish between the two. I just can't remember. Ability to edit pay type on payroll control. Cannot enter, yeah. So I guess I think that was a mistake. It's a technical mistake. I don't think that was intentional. So in payroll processing pay controls, particularly types of earnings, I think. Let me just try to find, let's do a type. There we go. There's a field over here called pay type, hourly, and I think this wasn't editable in certain kinds of pages. It was just, again, a control thing that was not that meant to be that way. I think it was on the paid hours, actually. I think that's where it was not editable, and now it will be editable. And what we want to do is make sure we're consistent. One of the things is that the system really honestly didn't care about the pay type on the paid hours, but I think we should make it consistent. The pay type for the paid hours should be the same as the earnings control it's connected to. And again, the choices there, of course, are going to be hourly or per diem, but I just want you to know that I think you should be consistent with that. One thing that we haven't done, which I still think we may want to do, is add the pay type to this list screen. It's not even on there. So it'd be kind of nice if you could actually see some of these fields right here on the list screen. It'd be easy to find more inconsistencies. So again, if people are interested in that, maybe we can put together a work order and say what fields we want to add to that screen. Might help people to be able to manage their pay controls and see patterns of data easier and better. I've always thought we should have done that. AP check copy bug. The detail line is including tax. This is probably something from Allie. She probably reported this, and I guess Mohammed maybe fixed that for you, Allie. I don't remember. AP check copy bug. Anyway, so
Golly, I'm trying to remember what that.
I don't know.
I know what it was. The detail on the stub was not matching the amount on the check. It was missing a couple of the entries.
Oh, AP check, being the accounts payable check.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Check copy. Oh, I get it. The AP check copy. Got it. Yes, I remember that now. Yeah, so this was in the place where you actually reprint an AP check. It's
correct.
An AP check reprint. It was not handling the taxation correctly, which, again, we have to do in North Carolina and now in Canada. So we have two places we have to deal with taxes. Export file tool bug, fixed a bug in the import process. Okay, so that looks good. I think it was just the importing of the data that creates the actual format was having an issue, and so we've fixed that. Change to web services GL account string for providing the data for the GL account strings LBAS, include the individual account components. That was Holly who asked for that, who was on this call, I thought, but maybe she's gone. But anyway, so we have a web service, a generic web service. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. And so let's see where the web services are. I can always forget. I think they're under IT administration. Let me see. Application setup. No, where are they kept? Just type web services. So we have some generic web services that are interesting. But the one that we're talking about is this guy here, and that's a generic web service that people can consume and read all of our GL count strings externally. So there's a few of them there that are generic. The ones that are more North Carolina are kind of, well, let's just say they're kind of weird. So I would ignore them. But there's some other ones that are generic. And web services would allow somebody to access the account strings externally, maybe as simple as just Excel. Excel can access the web services and basically get to the account strings. So just something to put out there. But we were just we had basically in that web service had just an account string. Now we remove the account string and put all the components, the fund, the GL account, and all the 8 dimensions. That's what we were doing in 1383. 1386, payroll liabilities to AP, change payroll posting buffer table and rework. Correct the issue that's caused liabilities to AP to crash under this condition. The reporting authority is set to detail. Client has more than one employee who had the deduction in the date range. Did I work on this one? Bill, do you remember? I don't know. But I guess we were having some problems there, and we fixed it. I'm just surprised. I'm surprised that this kind of lasted so long. I just can't remember. Oh, I kind of remember this. It was something to do with a key. It's too large. This is what it was. That's right. I remember Ben actually pointed this out. It actually was a key that we had that was too long for SQL. And so that's all that was, and that's what took care of it. Yep, I remember that. So that's good. That is really important because some people were getting some errors, some serious errors on 1386. All right, 1388, leave accrual, new date, schedule, choice needed. All right, so this was coming from Sally, actually, on one of our clients. I just don't remember who it was at this point. But what we were doing here is we changed onto the leave groups. The ability to have a different field for months employed versus anniversary date.
This was for Fairview.
Fairview, yeah.
Yeah.
So they actually they said, well, we use this date to determine how long they've been employed, but in terms of which date we want you to use to determine whether their anniversary is hit.
It was their new hire date.
Then it was their new hire date, right? So they just wanted 2 different criteria. So we went ahead and split them out, and we do, for all records, whatever value is here, we move it to there. So it normalizes it when we push this update. It's part of the SQL scripting so that everything starts as the way it was, but then you now have the ability to differentiate if you so choose, which obviously one of our districts in Pennsylvania did. All right, 1392, end of year carry forward. There's no ability to zero out a leave balance, get error message. And again, that's a technical flaw that we didn't know about, I guess, with all the leave changes we made. We went ahead and fixed that. Kind of expected some of that to shake out. Any more comments on that? I'll just move on. Time, leave, entry mapping, cause of absence description too short. We're having an error there. Went ahead and took care of that. So I'm not sure anything else more on this one. Does anybody know anything about 1394 they want to comment? Because I'm not sure more about that either. All right, I'll just move on. 1395, system-wide add ability to enforce one-to-one relationship between ASN and account string. That I do know about. That is Mohammed's work again, and Mohammed put a setting in there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's under General Ledger Setup. And it's probably, well, maybe it's not there. I think it might be there, but yep, there you go. It's right there. Must be validated. Okay, see, good. So he's saying that you cannot do this unless you're in the validate mode. And so what he's basically saying is with this choice of being in the validate mode, unique account string per ASN, then he's enforcing the system to only allow one ASN per account string. So it's kind of like then the ASN system becomes absolutely 100% kind of like their chart of accounts, if you will, of the district. And the account string is kind of almost secondary. We do have the ability, and I think in this same release or same change, I believe, the ability to create a new account string from the ASN, which is the logical way. So when you have that checkbox checked, they put a new ASN in, they click this button, they're done. So that's kind of the idea there. I don't think it does it automatically. I think you still have to click that button. Mohammed, are you listening to us at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can listen to me.
No, I know that. But that's my question is when you, with this new checkbox you put in that says unique account string per ASN, when you put a new ASN, do you still need to click this button to create the account string or does it do it automatically? Do you know?
No, it doesn't do automatically. You still
Okay.
have to click the button.
kind of almost should, because if you got that checkbox, you might as well just do it. But I can see why you don't, because you're not sure when they're finished with the ASN. Maybe they need to know. Maybe they rename it. Oh, that's not the right one. Let me rename it. Oh, okay, now it's right. Now click the button. So that's probably why it's better just to let the user do it when they know that it's completely correct. So again, we're doing a lot of work in the ASN area. I think we've been doing a lot of work in that area for the last year straight, quite honestly. All right, 1396, payroll calculations, new override capabilities. Oh my gosh. All right. So how do I explain this one? So I might need your help, Ali, on this one. So in the payroll journal, right, in the batch name, we've now added two new fields: override pay cycle and override employer. I do know that override employer is related to particular unemployment reporting, or what's called employment insurance reporting in Canada. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that, because I can't really think of a reason why in Ohio or other districts and in this country we need two employers. But in theory, it allows you to run a special sort of discretionary pay type batch, maybe for some additional, not their normal salary, but other kind of compensation, and actually assign all that data to another employer. So I'm not going to really go beyond that. But on the pay cycle code, what is a reason why? What's a good example as to why you would want to override the pay cycle?
We have a lot of special summer pay, particularly in North Carolina, and when their normal pay cycle has the installment indicator flagged on it, it kicks in the logic of you can't have multiple cycles together that are combinations of installment versus non-pay cycles, and the installment indicator also kicks in the special logic to just pull from the escrow reserve balance. So being able to override the pay cycle then lets me just generically pay you something that's not installment related if you're on an installment pay cycle for June or July.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So if you're using our installment system to reserve, it's that 10-12 concept. I'm paying you over 12, but you're working 10. Each pay cycle during those 10 months, I'm reserving, like a little squirrel, dollars over into the installment reserve. The reason that's beneficial is because I'm also capturing your account string as that's happening. So if you're switching your account string, you're federal funded, now you're not federal funded, whatever, then when I get those last 2 months and I'm paying you out, I can actually have the information stored in a way that I can hit your general ledger exactly as it should have been as you're being paid over that 10-10 account string wise. So then, as we built an entire installment system, which you've probably been knowledgeable about in previous conversations, Ali makes the point, well, what happens if I'm just doing a little summer run? It's like, now what do I do? Because all that logic is kind of like clamping down on you. So anyway, so when I click on one of these batches that I've maybe set up this way, and you don't have to have it preset, but I think it's beneficial to have them preset, maybe call it summer or something, and you can have a different pay cycle there. Then when you hit the calculate button, you're going to see stuff showing up, and this is where you're going to see this kind of stuff. And then at this point, you're going to fill in the information. It's going to guess what pay cycle period you want to put it to. You can override that and so forth and so on. So that's kind of what that's doing. The override pay date is also that's operational only when you're doing the override pay cycle, right? Because if you're actually doing normal pay cycles and you want to override, you do that right here. So this can be completely blank. It doesn't have to be filled in. This can be filled in. It will know what to do. So anyway, so that's what we were doing in that 1396. Real important functionality, really kind of a companion to an installment system. And I think that's really where we're seeing it probably most used, but maybe people will find other reasons to use an alternative pay cycle code. And so it does give us another tool in our belt, basically, to handle certain things. Calculate.
Andrew,
Yeah, go ahead.
I know in Ohio, a lot of the districts want to be able to do their leave and show it effective like on October 1st, September 1st, instead of the pay date, which might be the 5th or the 15th or something like that. So, and we're going to look at possibly using that functionality so we can go override the pay date so the leave actually post to the first.
Oh, I like that.
Well, but I'm not sure you need to. That's what I was saying earlier. I'm not sure you need. I mean, because you always have had the capability, and I'm going to go into this batch here, calculate and hit this guy. So you always have the capability of overriding the pay date right here. You know what I mean? So on this screen, you can say, oh no, I really want to back that down to 0731. You know, whatever. And you can do that today, just with the normal run. You know, again, normal pay cycle, normal pay cycle period.
And I can't, for some reason, I can't see the screen, but it.
Oh, am I not sharing?
You're sharing. I'm just having problems on this end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm in the pay cycle, pay journal cycle.
And when you change one pay date or a posting date, it changes all of them.
Well, no. Again, if I had multiple pay cycles, you know the button on the calculate that you click says select pay cycles.
Right.
So when you get to that screen, you might have multiple pay cycles you're processing, maybe multiple whatever. But in each, there's a column called override pay date, which you can change for every row that's in there, and put it to another pay date if you like. I'm just making that point. I'm not sure it helps you in this example, but you always have had that capability to override the pay date as something that's been generically there forever. We're just now giving you the ability to go farther and saying, you know, forget the pay cycle that's attached to the employee record. I want everybody that's in the scope and the filter of this run to be assigned to this pay cycle code, this pay cycle term, this pay cycle period. And, oh, by the way, I want to override the pay date if I so choose as well. All that is what we were delivering in this work order, but you still could have done just the override of the pay date before in just a payroll journal cycles screen that opens up when you click the button called select pay cycles.
Okay.
1397 payroll journal, calculate insurable hours. That's a pure Canadian thing, and I am totally not going to bore you with that, but that was done just for Canada. And unless you're moving to Canada tomorrow, I'm not going to talk. Do I have anybody on Canada on this call? No, nobody. Again, I can go over for K12 people if they want. Just yell at me, but I'm mainly thinking Ohio when I'm talking today. So just stop me if you really want me to, if I do go too fast. Payroll journal update, leave lines, no pay, make sure calculations have been run first. Okay, that was something that Linda brought up. Oops, I was in the right spot. So we added in a previous release a new action called update leave lines, no pay. And so what this was, the ability towards the end of the year, teachers been paid 10/10, let's say. They've been paid off, but because of the way time entry comes in, some leave taken is coming in maybe in that first July cycle. We've paid them off completely, but we just need to update their buckets. The data's coming through the time journal. So the problem is opposed to the well, let me stop a little bit. You may be posting your leave taken out of the time journal directly to the ledger. So in that scenario, this doesn't apply at all. But for people that are required to sort of have it kind of become part of a check, you got a dilemma when you have nothing but leave and no comp. And that's really, again, probably a North Carolina only thing, because I think North Carolina is the only place where we actually delay the posting of the leave taken and force it into the payroll journal to be kind of bound to a check number. And so because of that requirement, because the person has no compensation, we have this functionality to update those leave lines, because otherwise there's no net pay record. It's just they're kind of just sitting out there. So when we click and we ran this routine, well, what happened is that it kind of keys off the fact that there's no document number. And so what, of course, the district did is they calculated a huge batch. They hadn't cut checks. They hit this button. And it basically messed up the entire data set. And it wasn't a pretty picture. We had to do SQL scripting to get the data back, whatever. So what Linda said is, look, if you have no calculated entries in this batch, which means they haven't even ever calculated, you got a problem. They shouldn't be able to push this button. So that's what it does now. So when you click this button right now, actually it should fail immediately. And it says something like this: the batch needs to be calculated before this process can be run. So it looks for at least one calculated entry before it allows that button to be run, so somebody doesn't upset their uncalculated data, and so forth. So that's what 1399 was doing. 1400 speed import, that's again North Carolina, need to use last working date of the work week as date worked. So again, I'm not sure what's going on in here. Something probably Mohammed did, and something for Ali probably, but I'm not going to go further into it unless you guys want to, but I think I'm just going to continue on. Employee class, we add the FLSA status. So again, I'm not sure exactly what was going on here. This is something that Debbie and Kevin did, but let me see, employee classes. They added a field called FLSA status, unspecified, exempt, non-exempt. Those are the three choices. And then what happens is then then we add the field to the fast tab. So I'm going to go to the employees card. Anybody knows more about this, please jump in. So the fast tab, K12E fast tab. Okay. And we also have this field showing up as well. I'm not sure if this ACA status is part of this. No, it's not part of this. Okay, we add it to the view screens. Yeah, so I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure exactly what is going on in terms of, I guess it's the FLSA status is just meaning is this exempt or non-exempt employee, and we're connecting this to the class table so that when you go ahead and you put in the class for the employee, it will automatically fill in this data correctly. So we have a definitive field that shows up in the view screens to say whether it's exempt or non-exempt employee. So that's really what we're doing with 1401. Which is probably a pretty good thing to have. So, employee time analysis feature partially complete to be finished in 13.0114. Create a generalized calendar-oriented look-back functionality to be used in ACA reporting. I'm not sure where we are. Bill, do you have any idea where 1402? Where that is? Did we do more work in 14? I just don't recall. I haven't seen much more in 14 on this look-back functionality, or has it been worked on in 14?
I think Kevin's been working on it.
Oh, okay. But it's not something he's closed. I haven't seen a closed out email per se, right? So
I don't think so.
So we'll discuss that more when he has more of the look back functionality completed, and hopefully it'll be in the 14th release. So is that slated in your mind? That's a work order that's slated to be completed in the 14th release, is what you're saying, Bill?
Yeah, as far as I know, it is. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. Internal control number, field length. We had a field mismatch. Fix that. I'm not even sure where that was. The payroll journal line. Oh yeah, that was important. So we kind of fixed that. Time entry and accounting periods. So we had copied over some of this time entry work from another system, and in there they were checking the accounting periods to see if the fiscal year was closed or whatever, and we just decided it's just silly to be doing that, and so we just removed the check for the accounting period in the time entry system. So that was giving some people some headache. We fixed that by just removing it, basically. That was easy. Suggest vendor payments report. When using the suggest vendor payments process and choosing the one line per vendor per currency option, we get an error message about vendor ledger entry number does not exist. And I'm not sure. I saw the code that Mohammed wrote there. I'm not sure really what was causing it though in the first place, but you shouldn't get that message any longer. But I don't know much more beyond that.
Hey, George.
All right, 1411, calculate overtime hours, date worked on comp earned entries. Again, I don't know much about that. Christina, do you know anything about 1411?
I remember.
When creating comp entries, need to use the last working date in the week, not the last day.
Oh,
you know,
where we put out that nice little warning if they're time on your time journal, if you have used a date that's a non-working day.
Oh, okay.
So all of the comp was coming over with the last day of the week. So when you went to post your time leave journal, it was giving you an error warning message on all of those entries. So we needed to make it be the last working day of the week.
I see. So we won't get those. So that's how we approach it, to not get those messages when we try to post.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. 1412, payroll check reports, index out of bounds. In the payroll check reports, processing net pay, which consists of an after-tax deduction refund only, no earnings, getting an array out of bounds. That was a Mohammed fix. We had just an issue with the way the array was being built, and that was more of a technical flaw, and he fixed it in all of our payroll check reports, which I think we support 4 reports now. if I'm not mistaken. 1415, time journal line, units calculation when entering hours, minutes on a per diem job, and add step to set reset rates and do the same. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on in this one. Yeah, do you know anything about this one, Christina? There's a field called hours and minutes, and I've seen that field over the years, and I know it was causing some problem. I don't usually have that field on. I think it is a field that you can have on.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a field you can put on. I know that. I've always seen it there, and my guess is maybe somebody was using it.
Actually, Bladen was using it a while ago, and it actually caused them confusion. But since it's been removed, they know which ones to use now, just the units.
Oh, actually, so they were actually using that field though, or?
Yeah, at one point in time they did, a long time ago. I'm not sure why this is now an issue, but when they were using it before, it was causing Sandy a lot of confusion because she couldn't tell which one to use, either hours and units or hours units.
Ooh, look at that. So 4 hours and 30 minutes, right? Oh yeah, I can see why that'd be confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing though? I mean, again, add stuff.
Well, now they're using hour units. They're not using hour and minutes.
No, I know that, but my question though is there's obviously some work that was being done too. So it looks like to me, if we need to add functionality to convert the hours and minutes to days on employees' jobs for per diem. So I think also there was no understanding of this field if it was a per diem. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of what was being added there is some code there. So if you were to use hours and minutes on a per diem record, it would actually go, oh, that's a half a day. That's a full day. Because otherwise it wouldn't know what to do probably. So I'm sure that probably was just needed as we got started looking at it.
And with tax, I mean, everything in tax is basically hours and stuff, so
probably the validation was coming in, maybe validating that field. So it's probably more tax was just interfacing to that field directly, and therefore it would fail on per diem jobs because, well, the code didn't know what to do. So as you fix that, then it could naturally work, probably. So that seems like what he was doing there. Yeah, that's interesting. So that's some work that's all related to tax, which is this product that we use in North Carolina for time entry, right? Sort of like Crows.
Right.
1416, again, we're changing to LBAS. LBAS is a budgeting system for North Carolina, and this was specific stuff they were adding to these web services that Holly was requiring us to change. So we did that. Calculate overtime hours on 1421. Calculate overtime hours is not recognizing hourly jobs for salary jobs when time crosses fiscal years. So we're fixing that. Kevin, I'm sure, fixed that. ERC vendor inquiry. So what do we do? Are we actually adding that option then when the users want to? Yes, okay. That was pretty simple. All right. That took us about 5 minutes to do. Let me see. All right. Surprised this is still alive. Hello? You going to close that screen or not? Yeah, I was going to say I didn't think it was still alive. Okay. So what we're adding in this 1425, something pretty straightforward under the Finance tab, which waiting. Come on. Boy, it's slow today. We added a vendor listing. Now there are many, many other fields that you can turn on through the configuration tool, in the config mode. But we just added these fields as sort of the starting point, and then they can filter, based on wherever they want. The design here is the ability to see if the vendor is there. Because what they were doing, and we didn't realize this, people were creating requisitions, going to look up the vendor just to see if the vendor was there. They actually weren't interested in putting a requisition in. They just wanted to see if the district had done business with this vendor. And then, of course, they left the requisition header there, and we had a ton of blank requisition headers. Or purchase order headers. So we didn't realize why we were getting so many of them, and now we found out is that's what users are doing. So instead of him doing that, let's just give them a vendor listing. They can go see if the vendor's there, without having to go in and add a requisition. That is something that once we roll this out, it's important that people now use this as opposed to doing what they've been doing, which is not good behavior, creating these blank requisition headers or purchase order headers. So that's kind of what we were trying to do there. One thing that I'd like to see in the future, just as FYI, is proposed vendor. I like the limited users to be able to enter a proposed vendor, possibly put the requisition in or purchase order to the proposed vendor, and then a process later on where it has to come off the proposed vendor list before it actually could be processed to a certain point. So it can kind of go to a certain point, but then it can't go all the way until we get it sort of off the proposed vendor list, or something like that. I'm just making that up, but just something so that the limited users can actually create a new vendor, but in a controlled manner, sort of like they do with changing their W4, and we have to go through an approval process, kind of the same thing. So I think that's something that we should do down the line. I don't know if we have work orders for that already, but just something I was thinking about. And the last one that I see is 1427, web services, GL account strings, web services. Again, we were just adding some fields to the web services, so nothing there. So I've come to the end of 13. There's a lot of field changes that are listed there at that point, so you can kind of see all those. Tons of different fields and so forth. It kind of gives you some sense of things to go look for. So I do invite you to look at all the fields and kind of see what's going on there, but I'm not going to go through them all. And let me see, I'm just going to go to the very end, see if there's anything else at the very end of this document that's worth talking about. No, I think that's it. Yep, that's it. Okay. So I guess at this point I'll open up to the people on this call. Anybody want to ask any questions, discuss anything before we stop the recording and sign off on this call?
Wondered if last week's was recorded because off last week.
Yeah, well, it wasn't last week, but when you mean part one of this session?
When the last one was, because I think I missed it.
Yeah, it was. Bill, I'm not sure how you get it to them. I felt like you already copied it up to them at Meta. Bill, you there? Bill?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just talking to myself.
Oh, yeah, we enjoyed that. So,
Okay.
So tell us about the recording of part one. I'm going to send you part two as well. But do you know what happened? Did part one go up to Meta at this point?
I'm pretty sure it did, but I'll check and see where it went, and I'll send an email.
Okay, good enough. And I'll get you part two as well. And so Bill will have control of both of those, and we'll make sure you have those, or at least send you an email as to where it is on your network.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?